Hello everyone, welcome to this workshop, Law at BIM. I'll just briefly introduce our four speakers who we have here for you. Eduard Dischke, Morten, Marius, Ræder, Steen, Sunesen, and Anette, Bakker. I will remind you, for those attending online, this session will be 90 minutes and we'll have time for questions at the end. The session is being recorded, so it should be available on the BIM platform within a day, and then within about 8 weeks after the summit. For online attendees, the microphones will be muted for the duration of the webinar, and you can make comments in the chat function. And I will also bring to your attention our antitrust code of conduct. BuildingSMART is committed to ensuring participation in the development of standards is unrestricted, and the process for their adoption is transparent. And standards that are developed do not favor any particular provider and are open, non-binding, and accessible to all. And now we have a QR code to scan a BIM report, which is relevant for this presentation. And with that, I will hand over to Anette.
Thank you. You can hear me? Yes. So we will have now a little presentation about Norwegian perspectives on BIM and legal issues. And the report that you now scanned is a result of a work made in Standards Norway from 19 to 20. And we have translated it into English by AI, so we cannot take any responsibility over. So it will be also in Norwegian if you want, and then you can try to translate it yourself. But we made an effort. So the development of design tools have had quite a journey. So first from drawings to CAD. And today we have a totally different picture. A lot of processes are much easier today, but the scope and the speed of digitalization have brought up entirely new issues and challenges that were not thought of when agreed documents were made. So Open BIM and digital information workflow challenge how we, until now, legally regulate collaboration and deliverables in projects. So as I said, in 2019, Standards Norway established a work group, cross-disciplinary, to identify the challenges and legal issues caused by new technology and ways of working. So the work group was broadly composed, including representatives from consultants, contractors, clients, and software developers. And it consisted primarily of practitioners, which was very important because they are closest to the experiences of the projects. However, it was also good to have some lawyers present. And the work was very efficient. We worked primarily during COVID. We were a little bit delayed by COVID, but not too much. So we had about 10 meetings, but a lot of the work was done between the meetings. And the goal of the work was, and to end the report, was to provide a comprehensive factual description to enable subsequent contract committees to have the necessary foundation for creating contract regulations when they were needed. And the task was to outline the regulatory needs, but not to create the regulations themselves. And the work concluded in a comprehensive report, totaling around 70 pages and also 3 appendices. So the appendices we haven't translated, but it will be possible if you want. And I think this report is very interesting to all people interested in practical and legal aspects of BIM. It has 7 chapters, and first an introduction, and then 3 chapters with the main challenges, and then 2 chapters with topics relevant for regulation in the agreed documents and for general standardization. So I will already now reveal some of the conclusions. The agreed documents needs an update due to BIM, but it's important that the regulation does not prevent development and innovation. As software are still developing and new opportunities come all the time, and it's difficult to foresee the future possibilities. So many of the challenges raised by BIM are best addressed in the appendices. For example, performance descriptions or BIM execution plans, and do not belong in the contract at all. And this due to the fact that much of these topics are specific for the project and needs to be regulated in the specific contract for the specific project. So what the agreed documents need is fallback provisions when things are not addressed, for example, in the BIM execution plan. So in the report, the work group have some proposals. And the proposals can lead to 3 types of measures. Firstly, change of terms in established agreed documents or new standard contracts. Secondly, regulation in contract appendices, typically performance descriptions or and processes, usually without standardization because each project has its specifics and special needs. And third, standardization of services or and processes related to BIM, but not necessarily within contract terms. So during the process, the committee identified several topics suitable for general standardization, like this. And examples include process status codes, like LOD, MMI, it's called different names. And also BIM execution plan is also something suitable for general standardization. And the work group also assessed whether these measures were urgent and or if they were mature enough to be implemented, indicated by the color coding. So red is the highest priority. It means it's either mature enough or it needs to be standardized. And measures that were not relevant for particular topics were grayed out. And appendices, it's in the middle. It has no color because it's always project specific. So this you will see in the report that is always tagged with these colors and codes. So there are 3 chapters in the report where the challenges are described. And this is chapter 2, 3, and 4. The first one is about performance or process requirements. The second one about copyrights and storage obligations, and the third one on liability. These are the main topics. The committee found that there were several topics suitable for partial regulation. And we say partial because much depends, as I have said already, on the projects and the specifics of the project. And it must be determined in each individual project. So in many cases, it may only be suitable with a clause in a general term, a fallback provision, with more project-specific provisions included in appendices. So what's listed here under the red are topics that are either mature enough or points that should be changed in existing standards or agreed documents. And what's marked in yellow is areas that can be addressed in the contracts or may require further development before standardization. This is this slide I'm talking about now. I'm sorry, it's very difficult to see behind me. And during the work group also identified several topics, as I said, suitable for standardization in general. That can address some of the challenges encountered in BIM project, but which do not belong in the agreed documents. So I will leave you with this list. So I will now go over to speak a little about some of the topics that are discussed in the report. And afterwards, we will have Morten and Steen come up with me to discuss some of the topics from a client point of view and a consultant point of view. So the first topic is information requirements and intended use. In a BIM project, it's essential to specify what should be delivered and when it should be delivered. And this must align with the project schedule so that various processes and objectives support each other. This means that there should be requirements for workflow and work processes, and the project should have a BIM execution plan. In the BEP, or BIM execution plan, decisions and information regarding BIM process are summarized, and this includes everything from common project origo, software, tools overview, project participants, collaborators, to floor heights and other aspects that are crucial for organizing different BIM models in a way that they work together. And to ensure that all of this adds value, the project should be organized as a in a model-centric manner. And this means that the model is at the center of various contexts where evaluations are made and decisions are taken. And there are many different ways to use the information in a model today, and we will likely see new purposes in the future. On the right here, you can see some of the typical purposes for which a BIM model can be used in projects today. And in BIM projects where BIM is to be delivered, it's crucial to agree on what the BIM model should be used for. This has significant implication for several key aspects in the contract regulation. And the specific purpose agreed upon will naturally depend on factors such as the project and the client's needs, and therefore they belong in the attachments or the appendices to the contract for each specific project. In the terms of a standard contract or in agreed document, you could have a fallback clause on this matter. It could, for example, state that the model can only be used for agreed upon purposes and regulate what will happen if the model is used for another purpose, which it was not intended for. And it should also regulate what happens if you use it for something outside the originally agreed upon purposes, as this could trigger additional fees, deadline extensions, and have implications for responsibilities. And sometimes clients gain a clearer understanding of their needs or have changing priorities during the project, or technological developments might come into play. So this can certainly be positive for developing the industry competence, but it could lead to errors if the model is used for other purposes without proper quality assurance. So the consultant or the supplier performs quality assurance on the BIM model concerning on the purposes it is intended to be used for, requested by the clients, and the requirements in the project for objects, properties, and level of detail. Additionally, in Norway, the consultant is obliged by public law to ensure the quality of their delivery by identifying, verifying, and documenting compliance with regulatory requirements. So regarding quality assurance, the committee believed that overarching quality assurance requirements should be included in the contract terms as a fallback clause. For example, stating that quality should be ensured in relation to the BIM's purpose. However, the specific details of it should be addressed in appendices fit for the specific project again. And this is therefore marked in yellow because there's no sense of it's no urgency to this to regulate this, as it already functions quite well in projects today. The agreed documents are used for projects ranging from very small to very large, and these projects, of course, vary in character with different clients' requirements and for deliverables. So when building specifications, drawings, and models are available, it's crucial from a contract perspective for the parties to determine which information carrier takes precedence. This topic is therefore highlighted in red. And normally, and until now, the specifications take always precedence over drawings in case of conflict. And what should take precedence between drawings and model will still vary, as the details will depend on the project, the contract type, and BIM process requirements. Giving precedence to the model over drawings would make sense in a project without drawings or in projects where advanced BIM delivery is required, with minimal emphasis on drawings. For projects that primarily request drawings deliveries, it's not practical for the model to take precedence, as this would lead to significant amount of duplication of work and risk of errors. And therefore, the conclusion is that it's challenging and premature to standardize the ranking between the information carriers. Until we reach a point where the model is the central information carrier, decisions regarding precedence must actively be taken in each project. And BIM is indeed heavily reliant on communication. And it's crucial to establish a common understanding of what is being communicated. In a BIM model, many elements may appear to be complete without containing all the necessary information, or the information may not have been quality assured for the purpose yet. The amount of information in a BIM model increases throughout the project, and the model receives contributions from various disciplines. It's exchanged between disciplines and possibly even used on the construction site during construction. And therefore, it's crucial to use what is known as process status codes, or LOD, MMI, many names again, to indicate what has been quality assured or to show the current status of objects or areas in the model. There are different variations of these codes, but the key is to reach a consensus on which codes to use in the project. In the report, process stated codes are highlighted as one of the topics that are highly suitable for general standardization. And therefore, it's red on the right there. It's one of the elements that, alongside a BIM execution plan, has significant potential to address many challenges in BIM projects. And the standardization would then likely not be a contract term level, but except for some overarching principle, but it could possibly be a separate standard. So in Norway, there is a guide to this, and it will be available here on this website. And it has been made from all sides in the building industry, actors from all sides. And I think it's quite a lot used. The next topic is project materials and intellectual property. In the report, it's pointed out that it's necessary to regulate the rights to the data within BIM. And the issues of rights should be included in the contract terms, while technical aspects such as formats, phases, maturity, levels, etc., can be defined in appendices for each specific project. And even though there are possibilities of general standardization, the committee has identified this as an important area that needs attention, and therefore it's marked red. This clause is from our agreed document on consultant services, and it's important to note that this contract is from the year 2000, so it was primarily written with a focus on traditional drawing-centric production and not BIM. However, the group or the work group believes that the existing provisions in this contract can still work efficiently or effectively for BIM projects today. In this contract, the client is granted a right to use the BIM model or all the materials ordered, enabling them to carry out the project and for subsequent purposes like operation, maintenance, alterations, or extensions. And the interpretation of electronically stored material has evolved a little bit from the year 2000. It was traditionally, originally, it was like the PDF, and now it, of course, is a totally different story. And to avoid these discussions of what is electronically stored material, it's very important to agree beforehand on what formats to deliver. And similarly, when the contract mentions models, it originally referred to physical models or on a small scale used for visualization. This does not mean that the client has ownership rights to the BIM model in today's digital context. So it's very important to agree upon this in beforehand. So when Denmark revised their agreed documents in 2018, and where BIM was clearly at the forefront of their considerations, they arrived at provisions that are remarkably similar to our standard contract or agreed document. And this demonstrates, I think, that there may not be a need for significant adjustments, but rather emphasizes that the importance of being aware of the specific needs when entering into a contract. And we do see in Norway also that there are some clients who want to change the rules about this topic, and they want ownership rights to the project materials, not just the right to use it. And in this provision, you see here that the consultant even have to request permission to, or even to pay to use the material they have produced in other contexts. And if this were to become the general rule, it would increase the overall cost in the project and hinder the use of knowledge and cost savings. Clients normally benefit when consultants use their experience, methods, and object that has been developed in previous projects. And not only is this in the best interest of society and innovation, but there's also several practical challenges when the client demands ownership rights to project materials. And many of these challenges are described in this report. Because consultants, they all often use objects provided by the software they use, objects from equipment suppliers or external libraries that they have purchased, and they don't own the rights to these libraries, and therefore they don't have the ability to grant the extensive rights to these libraries or more extensive rights to these libraries than what is stipulated in the license agreement. And consultants also build their own libraries of objects. They have modeled or custom scripts, which includes programming that can be used in future projects. And smart objects and scripts can be significant competitive advantages for a supplier, and they may not be willing to give them up easily. So when a client demands ownership rights and perhaps reuses some of the project works in other projects, they may encounter challenges because the work contains numerous specific assumptions that have been quality assured for the purpose in this project. And in the next project, the assumptions are almost guaranteed to be different. And one may also question what the actual deliverable should be, the solution to the task at hand, or something that the client can continue to work with in other projects. So the scope and speed of digitalization have brought up entirely new issues regarding information flow and storage. From a daily routine where suppliers deliver the result of the work and communication occurs through email, we now have simultaneously and interdisciplinary project planning happening in the cloud, in project hotels, and communication often take place in chat on a platform or in a collaboration tool. And sometimes one of the suppliers provides the platform, and it's the gatekeeper that controls who should have access to the platform, while other times it's the client who controls the access. And in this context, there is a need for regulation to ensure that access is not lost in case of disputes or disagreements, for example. And in Norway, at least, traditionally, the consultant is obliged to store the project materials for 10 years. And when the client provides the storage platforms, the storage obligation is turned upside down. When the client is in possession of the project material already, it can be quite impractical if the storage obligation still rests on the supplier. And the question then becomes what the supplier can download from the platform to their own area. So this is important for the designers, both regarding documentation under planning and building regulation, but also in case of potential claims or disputes that may arise during the warranty period. The remedy that the supplier typically has when payment is not received is the right of retention or possibly suspension if the payment default is significant. In practice, invoicing and payment often occurs sometime after the design work is completed, and however, the right to retain effectively disappears in cases where the design work is delivered as it is performed. So you don't have these remedies. And there's also an issue about whether files can even be opened after 10 years, whether one must maintain licenses on the software to open them. And in this regard, we may need to think innovatively about what should be stored, who should store it, how it should be stored, and for how long. So here we come to we encounter what we refer to as a platform-related challenge. It's not just the BIM model that's in the cloud or in the platform. It also involves the software and the collaboration platforms that is used for communication in the project. And in this virtual mind map, you can see some of the problem areas that emerge in this digital landscape. It's a range of new challenges that were not present when working with traditional drawings. Consider, for example, the use of software for project design and planning. Project participants no longer download their software directly to their own computers. Instead, they lease licenses to use software located in the clouds. If they choose to terminate these licenses, they may lose access to the tools required for opening the files created with the software. And this raises questions about the duration of the software provider's obligation to retain data after license termination, the ownership of data, whether project participants can demand data deleted, and also if they can request to download their data from the cloud. Furthermore, security issues come to the forefront, including concerns related to GDPR, geographic locations of cloud servers. Some clients may require data storage occurs exclusively within specific regions or countries to comply with regulatory and security standards. And we have probably only seen the beginning of this development. As new opportunities along with new challenges are on the horizon, Norwegian architects and engineers are at the forefront of when it comes to digitalization, and the industry is eager to adopt new tools. So there's already a large number of programs and systems in use where data and communication are uploaded and stored, and you don't have control of it. So the solution is, of course, this is very important with the open BIM. So the last topic we will see a little bit into, look a bit into, is liability. The committee or the work group believes that this is very important to regulate the terms and extent of the liability. And therefore, of course, it's marked with the red color. And one thing is when some error or deviation occurs or someone is responsible for rectifying it. However, BIM project planning is much more complex and intertwined than traditional planning. BIM planning is carried out by many actors simultaneously, and while it can be time-saving and cost-effective, it can also be more challenging to determine where an error originated. So several parties may have been contributed to the error in various ways, and its effect can quickly spread and have significant financial consequences. And therefore, it's very important to consider the extent of the liability. So the report addresses 3 types of errors. And it's, first of all, errors in the model. It can be errors in entering basic information, such as errors in transferring supplier information about components. The consequence of such errors can be significant, and it can be challenging to determine how the error occurred. It can be errors in transferring a generic object into an actual orderable product. It can be missing information regarding specified requirements. For example, missing geometry or information related to geometry. And it can also be collisions. And collisions is not always an error. It can be rectified, of course, but it depends also on the level of detail. At what time do you deliver or do you look into the model? It can be an error that later will be rectified. And additionally, the report mentions some specific types of errors within this category that should be considered for separate regulation. It's errors during export-import, errors in software, downtime in cloud services, or network connectivity, like firewall, spam filters, or bandwidth, and some, these things. And the second type of error is when the original model for some reason changes its states and requires active intervention to be used further in the project. There can be various reasons for this, such as user errors, of course, issues in data flow or synchronization, errors in program code, problems in relation to databases, viruses, and more. And these errors can lead to loss of work, time delays, difficulty in assigning responsibility of the errors, inability to downgrade the models, to, for example, save them in a previous version without the error. And in worst case scenario, the model may need to be completely reestablished with all the consequences that might entail. And the last category of errors described in the report is when the model contains more information than it should, or when the information in the model is used for purposes beyond the intended use, leading to errors. Who is responsible for this excess information? And both the client and the supplier have a common interest in ensuring that the delivery meets the client's requirements and specifications, and that the content is quality assured and can be used as intended. and this requires action from both parties. So the report, as mentioned, does not contain solutions to all the issues that it discusses, and it will be up to the legal committees established or to be established by Standards Norway to find solutions to these issues in the future. And right now we have 2 legal committees at work, both dealing with these issues. And one of them is the revision of the contract of the consultant contract that I was telling you about, and the other is the new contract for design and build project, focusing on the biggest or the largest infrastructure projects in Norway that might have some special needs. So finally, I would like to mention that the Norwegian Association of Consulting Engineers and my association, the Association of Consulting Architects in Norway, have created a contract addendum to BIM deliveries, where many of these topics are discussed and have been addressed and regulated. So this is also possible to download from our websites if you are interested, in Norwegian, of course, but with AI, anything is possible. And this contract addendum, it consists of 2 parts. The first part is a form to be filled out, and part 2 is general terms and conditions. And in part 1, you address or specify the digital delivery concerning topics such as format, purpose, design tools, communication tools, etc. In other words, it covers matters that should be actively considered when entering into a contract. And the part 2 contains general terms and conditions, including the regulation of project rights, rank, purpose, responsibility or liability, quality assurance, and storage and retention. So now we have some interesting views from Steen and Morten, who will join. Jeg vet ikke om dere vil.
I don't know who's first. Should we just present ourselves?
Yeah.
My name is Steen Sunesen. I work in Statsbygg. My name tag here says that I work in buildingSMART Norway. That's true. I'm rented out to buildingSMART Norway. So at the time being, I shouldn't actually be representing Statsbygg. But I'm representing what I said back then while we made the report. So that's. Should I take the first one here?
Yeah.
Or no, it's not the first one.
Yeah, this is the first one.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll just introduce myself briefly. My name is Morten Ræder. I'm an architect at Nordic Office of Architecture, which is one of the largest, or if not the largest, architectural practice in Norway. I've been working with BIM since 2008 and been working on large-scale projects, small-scale projects, but mainly larger, more complex ones in the last 12 years. And I'm also part of the BIM task force group of the Practicing Association of Architects in Norway. And I haven't been part of this particular work group, but
in the background.
In the background, and also been discussing the topic with Anette regularly. So, but Sten, you will take the first part here.
Okay, thanks. I forgot to say that Statsbygg is the Norwegian government's client and owner organization. We're one of the largest public clients and owners in Norway, at least for buildings. We tried to take some of the topics that were mentioned and then give some of the input that we made during the discussion we had. And we still have those points, I guess. Those arguments, and which often has to be regulated in appendices and often has to be regulated in this specific project. Also, we clients, we do not have the same, public clients, for example, we do not have the same view. There were one slide you showed that were from another, I think I can say it, is from the National Hospital client. You didn't write it, that was polite. So that are very strict, that they actually demand full ownership of the model. In Statsbygg, we do not do that. We actually follow the much more, we want to be allowed to use the model for in the entire life cycle of that specific building. We will not typically, and we never discussed actually, to use a model and simply copy it somewhere else. And we don't provide objects from one model to others and so on. So we don't share data. That being said, as public client, we are for sharing data. We think it's good on societal level that we, and it's kind of one of the basic point with digitalization is that we have much easier to share data. I think that is kind of a basic premises that we are supporting, and that's kind of a is forming our policies towards how we require BIM. I need to look at this. This one is actually about.
It's about
the hierarchy of information. We would prefer that actually it was the BIM on top, because the building specification and drawings and many other reports and such is actually today in many projects derived from the model. So the model is actually the bearer of most of the information, is the source. So we want things to change there. The trouble is that the way of working and also software, and I think you're going into that as well, so I will not cover that, actually is an obstacle on using model as a contractual document, and also because it instead of that you have a model and then you make some reports with specific interpreted information that can be used as a document, as also as a contractual document, legal binding document, as a drawing or building specification. You just hand over the model, or you share the model, which may be alive, and then it's up to the contractor or whomever who's going to use the information to interpret the information themselves. That gives them the responsibility. And how we are regulated responsibility between us, the different parts of the industry, is actually an obstacle. Because today, it's actually the architects and engineers who are responsible for example, measuring and making such interpretation on making production plans. That will actually change, so the contractor would be responsible. The contractor do not want that responsibility today. So that is another thing we haven't regulated that today, and that's why we still have drawings on top. Also, we would like to have actually not just paper-free, but actually drawing-free projects. But we see that even in our own organization in Statsbygg, there are a lot of people, I will call them old-timers, but they have some strong arguments. Because I went through this with them, and they told us, look at this, I need this information so I can see it up once. I can get the same information in BIM. They use BIM, but it takes like 1,000 clicks to get all the information. So without an interface that is actually usable for them, it's difficult. I think that's kind of covers this slide.
Yeah, I think you touched upon, click one. Next one. Yeah, I think you mentioned it, that it's not because of our unwillingness to use the model or put the model in the center or on the top of the hierarchy. It's because we just can't rely on it, because it's the tools we use to create the models are just not mature enough. There's no way for us to properly verify that all the information we put into the models are kept there in the precise way that it was put into there, and also quality checked. There's no way to freeze information regarding in the model for the entire life cycle of the project, for example. It's so easy that relations are broken, and there's way too much things that can go wrong, and this is something that leads us to default to the drawings, because the drawings are, a cut in time of how the model looked at the precise moment in time, which means it's also much easier for us to quality control what's on the paper or in the PDF. It's much. You can do the same in an IFC export, And we do that, of course, but still to control the information in the IFC export is extremely hard because of the tools we use. I mean, most of the design tools today were created back in early 2000, and it was created mainly to automate or make drawing production faster and more reliable, so that you wouldn't have discrepancies between, for example, a cut section or an elevation and a plan. The door would stay in the same position and would have the same measures for all those drawings. And it was not so focused on the information you put into the model. This is something that has evolved over time and been put on top of the kind of the drawing automation features that's there, and that works great in all our software. But the information control part of it is really a big trouble. And this is something that we've been working on in the Nordic associations for architects, where we put out an open letter. You have one slide at the end of the presentation, I know, but I think this is something that we are extremely worried about, that, you know, the need and the want for models, both from contractors and clients, are, you know, rapidly increasing, but we're not able to deliver the models or put the models in the hierarchy that it actually needs to be if we are going to support the building industry going forward with being more model-centric. So it's also to do about, you know, proficiency of the project teams. I mean, usually you work with a lot of variation between project stakeholders. Some are really advanced, do scripting, automate exports, information takeoffs from various models, put it into other disciplines models. And sometimes you don't really have that expertise, but you have a lot of, you know, need for scripts and add-ins to the software, because we have a lot of quirky workflows in order to support model-centric projects. And that is only possible for the most advanced, the largest projects that we have. Smaller projects are usually not have that expertise and have to rely on traditional ways of working, so that every, you know, stakeholder in the project can make use of the design and the drawings and the deliverables in the project. Yeah.
And the next one you touched into already, Steen, a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's as I said before, reuse of information is one of the main reasons why we want to digitize, and we think of in life cycle perspective. We are among those clients we're against the setting up restraints. That goes both ways. As I said, we in Statsbygg we don't want to go that far that we are restraining the designers who have handed over the project, that they actually will not be allowed to reuse the information that they have, for example, an object library, in their next project. I mean, that I think that's ridiculous. It's a restraint that has no point. But of course, we also need to have been able to use the information that we paid for within reasonable limits, not just make a copy somewhere else, but to use it for different purposes. Actually, also other purposes that was intended. Of course, we bear the responsibility for use for other purposes. The discussion, as I remember it, was mainly about on smaller level, not so much as building design, but more like object themselves, because actually developing objects, especially in complex building with a lot of special equipment, is actually something that is take up a lot of time. It provides a lot of value, but we paid for it, so we want it and want to be able to use it. But architects and engineers, of course, should be able to use it as well. So another reason why I think it's it's not really productive to go into any discussion about the use that the designers could not use their own material, is that it can be very difficult to assess which objects that are developed in this project and which object that they actually have from before from other projects. Because meaning actually, if we are going to the extreme situation where we say they cannot use it, then they would actually demand that they are being paid for developing every object themselves. They're not bringing anything to the table. It would just make the project more expensive. I think it's ridiculous. So I think we need to have a tolerant approach, but it has to go both ways. We need to emphasize on the overall vision about reuse of information in a building's life cycle.
Yeah, thank you, Steen. I don't think there will be any issues actually if all clients had the same approach as Steen. The problem really just emerges when clients deny us the right to reuse our own intellectual property. I think that's it's easy for a lot of people to see, at least the issues arising there. But I think that we do have a lot of script subjects, as you said, that's not being developed as part of the project. But a question I have for you, Steen, is how are you actually able to reuse objects? Do you have some sort of, in order to reuse them, you have to have some sort of plan for, sharing it with the project team, for example, or in another project or a later stage. And I'm not sure if that's something that's been tested. Yeah.
We have no actual plans for reusing objects, handing out objects for other design teams at all. We're not doing it. We've never done it. We no plans for doing it. So it's quite an abstract situation. But we want to be able. The scenario is more like when we go into operation and maintenance and we have a more developed approach towards digital twin for asset management. This is where kind of the situation we want to be able to use it in the building life cycle and for operation and maintenance.
Yeah. But the contractors build their own libraries. They take objects of, we have 4 types of walls, you should use one of these walls, or and then you have to be responsible as an architect for.
Yeah, the liability issue. We're coming to that, and that's something where I think the problem
arises,
lies. Yeah, because it's not. I said, what about the chef delivering a delicious meal, and you want a recipe, and then you are caught in a trouble where you recreate the recipe. It's just not that good as with the original chef around, but the recipe also has some allergies to it. Who's responsible for, marking the allergies on the menu? Is that the author of the recipe, or is it the one recreating the meal once more? I think that's the easiest way I can sort of put it. But I think the problem. If you can continue, perhaps. No, we are not on liability, but I think that's where the problem arises.
We want to get to liability. That's fine.
Yeah.
We don't agree there.
Yeah.
So this is the storage and the common data environment.
I don't think there's any controversial things here as well. There's a good reason for clients or turnkey contractors to the appointing parties in ISO terms to have own the CDE and ways of communication. But of course, it's a challenge and it needs to be regulated and something we just need to be aware of. I think it was we had very good discussions in the work, and it is really important that we're aware of this. Otherwise, it may be an issue later on in the project. Absolutely. So yeah, I don't think I have anything. I want to get to the liabilities.
Yeah, there's just one wish I have for building smart. Actually, is that if we're moving everything to the cloud, which I think is, a prerequisite for moving the industry forward, creating the tools that we need for multidisciplinary object relations, having, communication, everything in one sort of platform, then I also think that IFC as a file format just doesn't cut it when it comes to archiving a project. You need an open database format instead of a file format. You need a format for offlining or downloading and archiving, but also for offline purposes, for classified projects that can't really use the cloud solutions. But they also need to be part of the development that goes on in the cloud area. And we need then some sort of open database format that will be, enabled to keep all the relations between the different models and the properties, parameters, etc. that goes into those models, but also for the communications, the decision making, etc. that also is part of a lot of the cloud solutions that we see emerge. So that's something I really, really hope that buildingSMART will pick up on and focus on in their continuing work.
In this one, I just want to share this with you. Many of you are probably aware of it, but both what a BIM is. It's a use of shared representation. And another thing is that it especially the last one, that information both has three kind of perspectives: geometrical and alphanumerical, and then you can have information that is documentation that is outside the traditional geometrical model, but is actually part of the information model in a larger scheme. I don't know if you have the next page. Now, okay, that was included there because it's at least I mean differing between the geometrical and alphanumeric information is in some points actually important to also to have a sense, because when it comes to liability, it's very much the alphanumeric information that is our focus here. You wanted to add something here on liability, because actually it was just a precursor to that.
No.
So we can just take the next one. So this is, I guess, where we do not always agree. As you heard, Anette said something about specifying purposes, and the purpose can be for the project and for the client. I represent a client who, yes, we do explain purpose, but we also have a very specific specification for which information to deliver, mainly on alphanumeric information that describes, identifies, classifies. And that is very important for us. So for us, it's actually quite easy to see if a delivery is according to our specification or not. Of course, to the agreed specification, because it's not a set requirement for all projects. It's a template that we specify based on the different project needs. But it is very specific. Many clients do not have that. If they only have kind of very overall purpose-specific, cross-disciplinary coordination, energy analysis, cost estimation, maybe two more, then it's actually up to who actually to specify what is actually included in that purpose. What can you expect to get at the handover? Because it's actually, maybe it's up to, if the client is not very specific, it may actually be up to the designers to specify it. And then you don't really have anything to say afterwards, because they can always say, yeah, but this is the information we used. And of course, they're right in their sense, and maybe you had other expectations. So this is one of the things that we see a lot of clients in Norway, typically smaller ones, who do not really have their own specification. Maybe they point to ours in Statsbygg. It's not meant to be pointed at from others who do not know what they're saying. Or they just say, we want BIM, and then say nothing more. So it's if you require, as we do, we also take responsibility if the purpose changes. So if you find out you need to do something else, there is no wiggle room. So if you require more information that we have specified, it's actually our responsibility to pay. So that sounds more flexible to just make it should be purpose specific, but that also where the conflict starts, because if you have different expectations and different interpretations, that's usually where the fight for the money, you need the lawyers. So it's not really recommended. So, but back to the first one, information that we get from our designers and also from contractors and product vendors, we expect it to be correct, no matter what, no matter the reason. One thing is human error. I didn't even write it on the board. I think that is self-describing, of course, but also the black box. There are some tools that are quite advanced. You don't really know what's going on. Analysis tools and such. Unsolicited information. Quite many software generate information on their own. For example, MEP applications, authoring tools, that is not really in the control of the designer. We don't want that information. So it's unsolicited. And can it be trusted? At best, it's just weighing the model down, but we don't know if it can be trusted. And maybe at a later term, at a later stage, somebody else are going to use it. And that's especially for the fourth point, the information additional to appointed parties interpretation. If we say that we want some information and we get more, maybe because we didn't agree on using energy analysis, but they had picked some doors and windows and walls from the object library with thermal transmittance codes on them, because that was where. They haven't checked it because that was not part of the purpose. So the information is there and is wrong. And then the contractor sees it and say, I need to procure all these items. They're bloody expensive, this one. A lot of requirements here, but they're wrong. And do not look in the building specification. I don't think it really will happen. They will always look in the building specification as of today. But if you have conflicting information, at some point, you also have a source for conflict in a project. And we want to avoid that. So all information that is delivered has to be correct. That's my point. I know we don't agree. So Morten, here you go.
Well, yeah, I think I can just answer Steen, and we can definitely open up for questions. But ideally, I would like to agree with you. I mean, I would definitely myself like to be 100% sure that the models I send out to Steen will contain no errors and will be completely checked for any information that's in there. But we all know that the software we use introduce bugs in export. It's also very hard to find the small errors or the deviations lying there. It's time consuming, and also something that, on a tight deadline, you're not able to assure that every aspect of the model is controlled at any given time. In order to prevent that, I think it's really, really important that we can agree on mapping, for example, use cases against object properties or property sets, because Steen has done a tremendous job in creating the building manual specifications for Statsbygg. But for the end user, it's a little hard to use because it relies heavily on IFC standards, and we need to translate that into localized language and something that our end users understand. So when you bring the model to the architects and the engineers and eventually to the building site, they will, automatically or intuitively understand what the properties they look at represent. And also for mapping it with to use cases, we know that we can agree on specific sets of properties that we need to check, and that every engineer and architect on the design team, are keen on looking at those properties before they send out the models. And that can be sometimes very hard with vague project briefs where, we have a client just demanding BIM, and they want BIM for simulation purposes, but they don't really specify what kind of simulations, at what stage the simulation should be done, or if there's a cost analysis, for example, it doesn't really tell us what kind of the level for the cost analysis is. Is it down to nuts and bolts, or is it just gross square meter calculations? Stuff like that is incredibly time consuming to be able to deliver on if we are introduced to a higher level than we anticipated at a late stage. So that is something that we will try to address in the industry. We try to find a way to define use cases and also define object properties that goes along with those use cases, and agree on that between both architects, engineers, consultants, or contractors and clients. And hopefully this is a work that we can start up with now, and also that we can have some sort of appendix to a contract. It's not part of standardization, I think, because it is reliant on technology, and technology evolves so quickly so that, some of property sets may be useful now, but obsolete in like 2 years because of automation and tools within the software that makes things obsolete. Yeah. So I think we are at a threshold where we will see a lot of stuff happening in 1 or 2 years' time, where we sort of are able to map our way through BIM or model-centric projects in a better way. But I think still what's lacking is actually our tools. I mean, it all starts with, the creation of the information and the creation of the geometry that we're going to deliver. And if those tools aren't up to, where we want to be, then I think we will always be lagging behind and trying to run after the development that Steen is pushing forward.
Yeah.
Questions?
I have a question. Several questions.
You've got that one you can use.
Is it working? Yes.
Okay, if I may. I listened to the role of IFC in your discussions, and I think I'd like to suggest that because IFC is a file format, people forget that it is a database schema, and it's stored in a text file, so it cannot be obsoleted by software becoming obsolete. And so it does fulfill the role that you asked for, that it is a long-term archive of a database of information. How we use it, we can discuss. But I think, as a matter of fact, it is a long-term database storage format. The other thing that you said you wanted was a way of storing the linkages between federated models and so on. And that is available. It's called ICDD, Information Container for Data Drops. It was specifically designed to say you can take multiple information containers, ideally IFC, but you can have other containers, and you can describe the links between those documents, even if they're PDFs, even if they're spreadsheets, even if they're DWGs, and create a archivable, complete set of what you wanted to say in terms of linking it all together. So we have the technology, we have the standards. Sometimes we need to get on and implement them. And of course, one of the things, for better or worse, about the IFC is that it freezes out all the cleverness, all the scripts, all the clever objects that you've developed internally, your investment, and says that actually what you transfer is the outcome of using those tools. And I think that clarity is really important. I mean, we did projects 15 years ago to show that we could transfer the cleverness if we wanted to. There's enough stuff in the IFC schema to transfer the covenants, but no one wants to do it. The idea of a clean transfer is really important to the IFC in the way of working. And it matches the 19650 process, where you can have a clean transfer based on delivering the information requirements that you've been issued. So I think we have the basis for doing what you want to do. It just needs a bit of commitment and maybe some tools, like you say. But I think most of them do exist.
You're absolutely right. I mean, for long-term storage, for example, it's a very strong argument we have for open BIM is for long-term storage. It is a Statsbygg. Some of the tools that we're talking about is also for representing information that is usually either measurements or alphanumeric information that is usually represented in an orderly way on a drawing, and you don't have ways to easily represent those in a digital way. So it's not the IFC file as a database or as a format. It's actually how it's been utilized that is an obstacle today. So we've been through that, but yeah, strong arguments definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be a question as such as IFC is as a standard is not capable of doing this. It's just that, you know, the tools we use aren't able to at least use IFC standards for this purpose. So maybe there's some sort of translation that needs to be done. I'm not sure, but what I know is that, for example, you have multiple models, and there's no way in a multidisciplinary model file project you can easily merge that into one IFC file, for example, and you don't want that because no one will be able to open that massive IFC file in any software. I mean, Solibri will freeze completely. Navisworks will handle it a little better, but in other ways, not so much. So, I mean, we do not really have the tools to handle those really, really, really massive IFC files. But again, I think maybe the standards are there and the solution is just around the corner. But it all starts with the tools and how the tools implement the storage, at least technology around.
You talked about respecting other people's work. The whole point of federation is to highly respect other people's work. So if an architect makes a model design, his name in the UK, his name is in the file name. He owns it. He's the only person who can overwrite it. He's the only person who can withdraw it. If the contractor wants to take that and make a construction plan or they have to put their name on it and say they're taking responsibility for the next phase. So the federation strategy is the respect strategy. It's the trust strategy. It says that people remain responsible for their own work.
I'm Peter Bo. I'm from buildingSMART Denmark, and it's been a pleasure listening to your presentation about the context of contracts and technology and the collaboration between these things. And I would like to ask you, could you elaborate a little about next step? Because this is an evolution, and somehow I believe within your mindset, you have an idea about what would you say in 7 years, where would focus be in the discussion about the contracts and the digital collaboration? Does the question make sense?
Maybe if I can start, my vision is that we continue the work that we already have and agree on both legal matters, but also other matters like building competence and specifying processes and so on. So it becomes more specific and we can put all the technology under the bonnet. We don't really have to discuss the technology anymore. And it's easier, much easier to integrate, because what we're seeing now is that we have an A and a B team. We have the large companies, the large clients, large contractors, large designers who are able to work like this, even they struggle. And then we have all the SMEs, we're really struggling. And we need to continue this work, I think, and make it so easy to use that the rest of the industry can actually follow up. That would be my vision.
Well, same here. I mean, when I started with BIM in 2008, I was told that it probably would take around 5 years' time before the industry would adopt BIM, and it would just become the the standard, just as CAD was back then. And then most architects were proficient in CAD and respected the layer hierarchy, and it was easy for them to work with. But as you say, I mean, the tools and the processes for BIM modeling and construction is just too complicated. It has become much easier now, but I think we need to see that the technology evolves and automates all the tedious and time-consuming work that no people really enjoy doing. I mean, who likes to go through tons of Excel lists, manual exports, stuff like that. I mean, we really want to do design, we as designers at least, and we want to create better environments for us to live in, etc., and not focus that much on delivery specifications. That's something that we would like to be 100% sure that everyone will be able to know what to do about.
Thank you. Just want to kind of replay what I heard just to make sure that I understood where you are. So you have a contract template now that the architects and the owners and some lawyers have agreed to, that then you can utilize on your projects right now. It's got the two parts, the form and the general terms. But is that a fair statement that now there is a contract in place that can be used, that both sides agree on? Is that a takeaway that we can?
No, the contract is from 2000, so it didn't have BIM in the forefront of the thought. So now it's under revision. So we are maybe 1.5 years into that revision, and thinking of and using this report as the ground for maybe making new provisions. And but what we see is that it's difficult to make provisions that does not hinder future development. So you cannot have very specific provisions. You need to make them flexible to endure the development of the future.
So this addendum, BIM addendum,
this BIM addendum is not from Standards Norway. It's not a agreed document. It's from the engineers and the architects. So it's possible to use as an addendum to the existing contract, and it takes care of a lot of these, or at least it's a ground floor for a discussion of these matters. So, but it's not an agreed document.
Okay. And then a question on the owner side. So just want to understand where the state of the art is right now. So you have no problem identifying your information requirements of what you want to receive, right? Like that process is dealt with. You know what you want. Then
I think we can go to one of the next slides and just have a small screen. Maybe next one, that one. Mm-hmm. This is just an excerpt from a requirement database, very specific.
So you have that, and then you accept, and you have no problem checking what you receive against those requirements.
It requires both MVD-XML and also IDS 096 at the moment, but of course we are hope for the 1.0, and so you can check it with checking tools. Right now we use a Norwegian tool called Anker for checking via MVD-XML.
And on your side, delivering in that format isn't an issue, right?
It can be, yeah. I mean, for, let's say, fire requirements, it's an issue because we need to have, in order to deliver on his specifications, we need to have like 4 different parameters describing fire requirements, both for doors, walls, etc., because it has to align to the IFC schema. We would like, our end users to just focus on the Norwegian term, which is brannkrav, or fire requirement. It makes super sense to them to be able to specify that in the models. But if they are, have to look on 4 different parameters, or, varying between different object types, then things starts to get messy. And they will put in, the correct parameter perhaps for wall on a door object, and vice versa. So we have issues like that. but the kind of information he's asking for, I don't think we disagree there. I mean, it's all super logical information that we all need to, address when we design the building. So I don't think we disagree there. It's just about the interface, more or less, and that's solvable. But we need some software development to go on to help us through that. And right now, I think it's hard for us to use, let's say, Revit for this, because or up until now, you couldn't have like alphabetically sorted parameters lists, so you were not able to highlight the parameters you wanted our end users to focus on, for example. But this is something that probably will be solved in a few years' time, because we have had good progress with our dialogue with Autodesk on this issue. Yeah, I think it boils down to actually that the user interface is sort of the bottleneck for us to be able to deliver on these specifications.
Yes.
Ideally, the weak point in that workflow that we are having is actually the human readable report from our specification, and that the designer has to read it, understand the standards it's based upon, and deliver information, often with requirements to syntax and so on, and with no help from the software. And this is where we really need now some help to have computers to actually start computing to help their customers. And because today it's so manual, everything is manual. And I think actually maybe we don't have much time, but actually that was one of our last points that we discussed before we, as a preparation for this. The more ideally we could get any information that we want and we need, but of course it should be automated as well, the generation and maintenance. As it is of today, everything is manual. So for every bit of information that I require, it costs more, and usually the project will not get more, so it costs somewhere else in the project. So I'm not sure that a lot of requirements actually create more quality on a overall holistic scale. I think that's a discussion. We have to be very certain that the information I require is actually realistic. Is it feasible within the budget? And is there at least one user who will benefit so much from it that you exceed the cost of it? I think that is an important discussion we're going to have in the industry, unless we start to have computers compute and generate the information, because it has to go that way.
One last comment, I guess, a question, mostly for the room. You're doing all this work in this chapter. All the other chapters are doing similar work, trying to understand how to deal with these legal issues. I guess the question is, what is the role of building a smart international then here, in terms of coming up? Is there an opportunity for building a smart international to take the lead here and kind of work with different chapters to understand what that legal answer is? Because you've obviously made a lot of inroads. I know that other chapters have worked on it as well, but nobody really has a solution yet, from the sounds of it, right? Is this an international discussion, or are we all on our own trying to figure this out?
It should be an international discussion, because we can learn from each other. Absolutely, but since it's very, very, very often national standards, like contracts and so on, and also relate to practices, I think it has to be regulated on national level. But we should work together and not invent the wheel every country, definitely.
Maybe I can also say some words on this, because I'm in this law at BIM committee, and especially what you said, it's really important, I think, to learn from each other, and that's why we built this up. We had a law at BIM workshop in Düsseldorf in 2019, and we had one in Rome in spring this year, and now we have one again, thanks to your participation, and learned a lot of new things about how Norwegians see these on legal issues. And I think it's very important to have this lesson learned. Also to have in mind that we have all of our own jurisdictions. Not everything that is possible in UK or in America or say in Italy is possible in Germany or is possible in Norway, because of course we have other jurisdictions. But unless we can learn from each other, it's very interesting. You having the same questions, you having the same thoughts about many things that we in Germany, for example, have too. Is there any other urgent question? Right, there's one, and then I have one, and then it's time for some closing remarks today, I think.
I'm a client developer from Singapore, and I absolutely agree with client. I think Steen, is it? Yeah, I fully agree that the information that's passed to us must be 120% correct. Yes, it must be, because we paid for it. So I'm going to ask a question to the developer. To the architect first. If the developer would have paid you additional money to get that job done properly, would you have done? Would you do it? It means that you will pass the thing to him 120% correct. And this is to the client. Would you then pay him the additional money? If you can do that, problems resolved.
Well, I don't think it's a question of money, really. I mean, we do have our fees, and obviously we really want to, deliver 120% correct information if possible. But the problem is that there's so many variables in the processes that goes on, which is related to the tools that we use, that actually makes it impossible for us to deliver at least on all aspects. But there are obviously in larger, more advanced projects, a lot of clever people who are able to automate things, to bring the information out of the model and to sort it in Excel sheets, where it's much easier to quality check information, for example, and bring it back into the model. But we are always reliant on those kind of quirky workflows where we have to pull something out and bring it back in, and the tools aren't really built for that. And introducing information that's not supposed to come from an outside source into a model can also lead to unwanted situations at sometimes. So we are a bit reluctant on doing it on a regular basis, unless we do have the advanced users on the team that are able to handle those kinds of scripts and tasks. But yeah, so it's not a question about money or willingness or time, because we can do it, but usually there is not willingness on the other side to pay a lot for us doing this kind of work.
Can I just have a comment? Because when we started this discussion, we were much more in conflict because we didn't see it from each other point of view. I remember that we were much more disagreeing than we are now. So by talking to each other, we have learned both sides. Now we need to spread that out to the industry so we understand the complexity. But initially, why we had this topic was that we said we want all the information to be correct, and then designers said that but only information that is the specified purpose. And then we say but further down the line in the life cycle of the building, who knows about which purpose you agreed upon back then 20 years ago and so on. So, but now we understand the complexity on both sides, and we're not as the lines are not we're not as confrontational anymore. We're more seeking how to actually work these issues.
Maybe just share a little bit on our experience in Singapore on this issue. Actually, for us, we extended the design period. We gave our consultants, architects and engineers, more time to design, more time to get the information correct before we actually get onto the construction part. And we also, at the end of the project, we also we also do not expect that at the point of completion, the data is 100% correct. we expect that we actually gave a little bit more time, maybe 6 months after completion, to get all the information correct. But there are definitely certain information that has to be correct at the point of completion. For example, your testing and commissioning results, some of your operation and maintenance manual, it needs to come to us because once we actually take over, we have to run the facilities. So this is the thing that we do. But by giving our consultants more time to get the job done, it will also mean that we actually pay them for the additional man hours they actually invest in it. On the developer side, it kind of worth it from the perspective that I can actually use the information far better, and the cost benefit analysis is so much better on my end just to get it right. Yeah. So just this Singapore experience. Yeah.
Just a short comment. I think that sounds sort of like a really, reasonable and rational approach. And if I'm not wrong here, I think that's actually what's going on in the oil and gas industry in Norway, where I think you do have a lot more time in completing the information part, because when you're going to operate like a factory or a facility that, there's related to millions of dollars, if you have downtime, for example, then it doesn't really matter what it costs to get the information correct from the designer's end. But in building industry, there's really, a keen focus on short-term return of investment, and then you just want the building to go up as fast as possible. But I really like your approach there. I think that's a really good way to solve the issue.
I do not sell my property at completion. I actually continue to manage it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, maybe you already gave me an answer, but my question is, right, doing the report, did you harmonize your report from with other industries that are facing the same problem of using digital instead of paper in Norway or somewhere else?
No, only the building industry, maybe also a little bit infrastructure, but the building industry mainly.
Oh, okay, thank you. No, because something is, I think talking with people, I don't know, like oil and gas or pharmaceutical or other business that probably are facing the same problem. Probably could be messy, but helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think we ran out of time. One last question, if you allow, from my side, being a lawyer, or in my case, an in-house lawyer, having developed this standards and these report and standard contracts. Are you aware of any more legal disputes in your jurisdiction focusing on BIM cases, or is there really a level or a lower number of cases concerning those issues? Do people still dispute over these contracts, or aren't they?
I don't know if really BIM is the dispute. Sometimes it's maybe helpful to find out where the error really, or who is reliable. But I haven't seen any cases in the court where BIM is the problem.
Yeah.
So I don't think maybe there is more or less. I think there were.
Just wait until AI comes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it's my observation too in Germany, so that's very interesting. Where we have cases is mostly in procurement law, but this is EU procurement law, so you're not.
Oh, we have the same.
Yeah, you have your own procurement law, of course, but we are obliged to have EU procurement law, so that's a different story. And well,
I think we have always the same. We implement it exactly, or in the best student in the class, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I think deserves a round of applause for our speakers today. And I hope we can make this a permanent institution. Law and BIM workshop. I said we had it in Düsseldorf, we had it in Rome, and now we have it in Norway. So it's 3 times now. It's a tradition. So we should have it in Valencia too. I will speak to the managers of buildingSMART. And I thank you very much for your attention, for your interesting questions, and for the vivid discussion we had And have a nice afternoon here in Lillestrøm. Thank you.